Hello, everyone. This is Charla Dinkoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert. Welcome to you to another live Tuesday tea time with Charla. Let me take a sip of my protein. It's congealing. So after weeks away in sunny Florida, as you saw last week with my good friend Sina, who did the Tuesday tea time interview last week, and then a wonderful, amazing WPO Women Presidents Organization, my first ever conference in Fort Lauderdale at the Ritzy Diplomat Hotel was so much fun. It was talk about emotion. I mean, emotion and in person in the age of AI is the number one currency, collateral. I mean, it's going to be everything. And very interestingly, of the three breakouts there in one of the breakout sessions, the AI titled one had 109 attendees, and all the other ones had like 30 plus attendees. So I'm just telling you that anytime the word AI, especially in small business, is taught or used or talked about, it is the big flag of I want to know. And the biggest sentiment in the room when it comes to AI is what I always talk about, which is the fear of missing out, the FOMO. So that was the biggest sentiment that I got around AI at the conference. But honestly, I mean, these are women who are making multi-million dollars in their business. So these are a very small minority, because first of all, there's very few small businesses that make that, and also they're women. So and most of them have been gathering, in under the WPO flag for many, many, many years. Some of the people that I met there were like decades long in, over 15 years, 14 years in the network. So that tells you that they've sustained a business of that size for that long, regardless of what was happening in the industry or, in the socioeconomic, geographic, whatever else was going on. So it was very, very heartening, just a great reminder that the most self-actualized human beings are getting it done no matter what's happening. And of course, the biggest reminder, especially when you gather hundreds of women together that are so high achieving, is that they use emotion a lot. They have a really high EQ, emotional quotient, which, if you've heard of what that is, that they have a really great ability to be able to understand and speak to the needs of their teams and their clients. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is put a little, as usual, research and science behind what makes clients stay. And of course, in the context, I always talk about B2B and selling to large corporations, because for 18 years, I bought services when I worked at Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay, and now I'm in the lucky privilege. I have that privilege of owning this practice where I'm teaching business owners, small business owners, how to sell to these large corporations. And they can be fickle. Large corporations have lots of different options, and they can make you or break you because they're big. And we're not as big as them, but we still know how to get them and keep them. And today is about keeping them. So here are some stats and science to back up some of what I'm going to be saying, which I found to be really, eye-opening, because some of these are relatively new research, and it's most especially relevant because this is in the age of AI, where there's an enormous glut of replacing human services, or at least looking forward to it. And like that, the session where we did with the breakout with the AI was talking about how to replace, and which I found out that in China, they passed a law that you cannot restructure someone's job because of AI, which it was like such a huge news, but that they've made it illegal to do that. So, but that was the big impetus, is how do you build an agent that's going to do XYZ much faster, much more effectively and correctly And so we can save you time and or money. So then when I think about, okay, well, how do you marry that with the emotion of keeping clients? Well, here's what some of the stats are saying. 1 in 5 B2B businesses lose more than 40% or more of their clients each year. So this is an UpCity survey, that's a business directory platform, of more than 400 plus B2B businesses. And the research says that 66% of B2B decision making is done emotionally. So that only leaves like 34% with logic. And I have known and talked about the value of emotion because I always talk about having pain-based marketing because 85% of decisions are made. 70%, I said 85, but I think it was 70% is of decisions are made based on emotion, based on pain. So one other thing is the emotional buy. So buys that buyers, B2B buyers, have identified as based more on emotion spend 23% more than they would if it's logical and stay 59% longer. So everything, all of this research is telling you how important emotion is in buying. In fact, it's everything. One of my sales coaches used to say that it takes 1 second to decide if they're going to buy, but it takes them sometimes hours and days to convince themselves and come up with rationalization of why they're either going to buy or not buy. So, how do you use emotion to make clients stay? Step number 1 is map and deliver which emotional value. So, I did not know this, but there was research done, and it's very famous apparently. It's called Bain's 40 elements. And they are emotional elements or elements of a buying journey that are mapped out. And there some of examples are ease of doing business, reduced anxiety, reputation safety. So these are all the things that this guy Bain mapped out, and he wants us to first interview key stakeholders of the people that are going to be doing. And remember that it's now an average of 13 people who are buying in a buying committee for large corporations. So you need to have an idea and interview all these key stakeholders of what their personal attributes are, the 40 elements are, and map them out of the key stakeholders and top prospects and find the hot spots. Number 2 of how to map and deliver which emotional value is you need to align what your deliverables are with their hotspots. So for example, if their top value is ambition, you have to design and pre-build an internal like a presentation deck that shows how they will benefit, their role and their person will benefit. Or if it's someone you're already working with, show how they've already benefited personally, or how their role has contributed more to the company because of working with you. So you have to look at your service from their lens of their biggest, highest value. And this is almost like a key to working with anyone and speaking anybody's. It's like their love language. So you remember, this is very famous in the world of, marriage and dating, is what is your love language? And, there's a 3 or 4 categories. I can't remember. And I think it's, is it physical touch? Is it, verbal, saying nice words, or is it gifting? So this is very similar, but it's detailed in figuring out where is what they value, their hottest spots, and emotionally their hottest spots, and then how can you deliver that in what you give to them. So step number 2 in preventing your clients from leaving using emotional levers is become more reliable and increase the trust in the relationship. Now, how do you do that? Look at your delivery metrics. Are you on budget? Are you on time? Do you deliver enough ROI? Do you communicate frequently? How are they measuring? What are the KPIs against what you're being measured? What are they being measured on that you're contributing to? And then proactively, again, develop programs to outperform on the metrics that they're looking for. This increases the trust. And then build more than one relationship. Remember, I told you there's an average of 13 people in that buying committee. So that if one walks away, that you still have all the relationships. Or if you have less of a rapport, or you're not as able to serve the one, you're able to serve all the other ones. So build a relationship inside with multiples so that the trust increases as a whole. And then use regular executive check-ins. You could do them spot checks. You can do them expected as part of the contract that you'll be meeting with them every quarter. And you give them the transparent reporting, the dashboards, the checks, and everything against their KPIs. Speak their language and speak their emotional language, even though they don't recognize that that's what they're looking for. They don't look at it or label it in Bain's 40 elements. They just are themselves. Step number 3, and remember, you always see the world from your own lens. So they think everybody else thinks like them. They think that everybody else is looking for the same emotional attributes like safety or less friction or whatever it is that you've discovered. So make it more risky to switch than like to switch to another vendor. Make it like an unbelievable thing to do. Is make it something that's not even negotiable for them to switch. Make it really, really risky, because when you're providing so much safety and trust, then it's going to be really risky for them to switch. Okay, so step number 3 of how to make B2B clients stay using the emotion when we are inundated with AI is focus on the person's own stakes. And I always teach this to clients who are doing my 5-step sales conversation is you need to understand what are the stakes for this role, this person, this human being, and the company. What will they be losing? Or, what opportunity will they be missing? So when you focus on the personal human stakes, you go from promotion of your company and your services and your products to emotion. And this is a study by Google. And it's actually, I've read about this study before. So when you give the buyer the personal, that there is a perception of personal benefit. So what do I mean by personal benefits? What are they getting? They're getting something out of it. So either they're getting career advancement, they're getting pride, they're getting confidence, they're getting awards, they're getting to fill their KPIs. It delivers twice as much impact as if you're only giving them the business value. So if you're talking about what is the gap in what your vision is for the company and what we can do to deliver that vision, and what is at stake for you and the company. So if you can demonstrate both, but especially if you demonstrate what's at stake for the person, Google's research says that that's twice as valuable as the non-emotional benefits of what it would do for the company. And so as the business value. So then how do you get to that? Like, how do you understand that? So one, as I said, do the open interviews, interview openly about the metrics that they're looking at, the personal. And you could ask, so one of the ways that I ask in my 5-step conversation is what's at stake for you and your company. And then here's another way to ask, if this engagement is wildly successful, what changes for you personally? I love that. That's a positive way of framing it. And then systematically, as part of your work with them, create brag sheets. I love to call this brag sheets for them to regularly forward up to, the other 13 buyers, or up to their bosses or to their team. And this would say how they themselves were instrumental in increasing the ROI, increasing the KPIs or meeting the KPIs, increasing sales, decreasing costs, whatever their metrics are. Make them look like a hero, but create these brag sheets. Nobody's sitting there and doing this for themselves. But imagine if this was part of what you were doing on a regular basis. So one of the things that I do is I actually have clients, whenever they have a success, come and visit on this, interview on this live, and they're able to share not just with my community, but with their own and with, the introverse, the universe, to tell everyone about how they got to that success and what they did. So it reinforces in the moment. It's not just when their contract is over, but throughout our engagement, it reinforces it's a brag sheet, but in fact, it's something they can hold on to. It's a forever video in the internet. Okay, so then another way that you're going to be able to focus on the human personal stakes is you spotlight the buyer in the permanent case study. So you can have case studies on your website, you can have it on LinkedIn, they can have it in their own business. You can put it into webinars. I do that with my clients, and you can share it with the peer community. Now, sometimes they don't allow you to. They won't be able to allow you. So sometimes they won't be able to allow you to do that because they can't say what the name of the company is. But whatever you're allowed to share, whether what industry, what the scope of the size is, what the problem was, do as much of that as you can. They will know who they are. Step number 4 in how to make B2B clients stay using emotion is increase their sales. If they're in business, their love language is sales, or whatever it is. If they're a nonprofit, it's their, donations. If it's a school, it's the number of tuitions. So this is, I'm sorry, they're trying to, I'm trying to get a call, but I just keep hanging up on them. This is what happens when you have lives. I should block it, right? Yeah, I should. Exactly. Okay, so Brierley's loyalty research is the customer loyalty. Brierley is a customer loyalty company. I have to focus and get rid of some of the screens that have popped up. Okay. It says that emotional loyalty increases as the supplier helps the client increase their sales. Now, how do you do that? Is you proactively come up with ideas, even if you don't sell them anything at all to do with the sales. I mean, I'm a sales coach. That's what I do. But if you're selling them a cleaning product, or if you sell them like accounting services, you proactively come up with ways to introduce them to new clients or new networks, come up with new ways of increasing their margin, come up with new ways of increasing their efficiencies, even if it's outside of your service and product. And then curate introductions in your actual networks and your community. And then publicly celebrate their milestones, their successes, and shout it out. Like one of my clients, she won multiple women's president's awards on multiple platforms. And one of the things that we did to talk about it wasn't about her just putting up one post and say, I'm so grateful to have won. No, we turned it into a year-long campaign where she was honoring every single other winner, but seeding in the fact that she was also one of the winners and how proud she was, but she was celebrating everybody else in that community. And that got her so much traction in that community. So those are some of the ways that you can do that. Step number 5, and the last step, is make it low risk and easy to stay. So again, the Bain's 40 elements of B2B elements of value is, here are the ease of doing business, like what easy and frictionless is. These are the values: is ease of doing business, reduction of complexity, so low complexity, increased time savings, reduction of how long it takes to complete it, and reduction in friction, and increase in risk. Increase in risk reduction, decrease in risk. So these are all under the guise of ease of doing business. Now, how do you do that? Is you audit the friction points. What is taking too long? What is causing too many emails? What have you ever had complaints about? And where do you think, and you could actually ask your client afterwards, where did they see was the biggest, chokehold and the friction point? And then, obviously establish a practice to overcome those, put in, systems to overcome those, and then proactively engage in forgiveness practices if you drop the ball, or if something takes longer than what they expected, or if there's less than satisfactory feedback from the client is you give credits, or you gift back things, that they paid you, or you indulge in something called over apologies, where you offer make goods or some form of gifting, which I find has worked on me as a client, has really worked well. And I always use it with clients if I miss a deadline, if something happens that, was because of what I wasn't there available for. I'm always more than happy to credit, or, gift extra time or whatever else I can. And then the last part is offer low risk options. So pilots, phased rollouts, opt out. So, cancel at any time. Any of that stuff is going to build trust. It's going to reduce friction. And these are all emotional levers. So, to summarize, learn the emotional levers. So, this is like the business love language of, the Bain's 40 elements of what your buyers and what your key account, executives have internally, and what they expect, and then work systematically and strategically on those levers to make sure that they never leave you, and you don't become part of the statistics where 40% of your clients are churning every year. I hope that was helpful, and I'm going to call back whoever the devil was calling. I think it's from my mom, but I will see you next week. All the best.